Hello. Forgive me if I sound a little nervous. I can talk about Star Wars all day, but it's rarely in front of 1,200 people at the same time. Um, I want to talk about three things today. First, I want to talk about dreams. Not the kind of dreams you have when you're asleep, but the kind of dreams that inspire you to create, learn, share. And specifically, I want to talk about a couple of examples, dreams I've had since I was a kid. One of them reasonable, one of them maybe not so reasonable. And then secondly, I want to talk about how if you can find some like-minded dreamers, you can achieve pretty much anything you want. So here's the first dream realized. And third, I want to talk about a tool that we're working on that you can use to hopefully find your like-minded dreamers and realize your dreams. So that first dream started a little bit before 77, but basically I was 12 years old, saw Star Wars. Holy crap, robots, spaceships everywhere. You know, I want to live in that universe. So, didn't have a lot of resources as a kid, but definitely had the support of the family and a huge imagination. So, of course, you know, I'm going to draw this stuff out and figure out how I'm going to do this someday. But, you know, you grow up, life gets in the way, life happens. But you never let go of some of those dreams. This has been on my truck forever. So just a little bit, 77 was a huge year. It's big life-changing events. Our family moved from the suburbs out into the country on this huge farm that was wonderful. Of course, you know, a little movie you may have heard of came out that year, kind of changed my life. A lot of other stuff, cool stuff happened. So I tend to refer to events in my life as being either before or after Star Wars. So you may hear me say that, and just as points of reference, I've included those here so you can see how things have progressed. So I'm 12 years old, and I'm dreaming about, you know, I want my own R2, I want my own robot. But like I said, you know, you grow up, you hang on to the dreams, but you realize that you can't really do everything, especially as a 12-year-old, you kind of give it up. But then you grow up, those dreams don't ever actually go away. And look out, I'm dangerous now because I'm an adult, I have resources, and I still have those dreams. So I think, well, maybe I'll start, you know, small, something achievable. And, you know, everybody, well, I can't say everybody, but when I give these talks, everybody who's in the room with me, I can say everybody because they come to hear this stuff. Everybody wanted to be a stormtrooper. So this is, you know, in the early days of the internet, this is way before any of this huge online communities and stuff. So I tracked down a comic book store in Texas that had a homemade stormtrooper outfit that they were trying to get rid of because it had been in the front window of this comic book store and it was falling apart, and the guy was like, sure, I'll sell it to you. So I grabbed it. It wasn't the greatest. It was pretty awesome. Nobody else had one around, and you know, I was the coolest guy ever. Loved it, but I could tell because I was such a huge nerd that this isn't exactly right, but at least, hey, it's Stormtrooper suit. Fast forward a couple years, and the internet's growing. I get online, I'm discovering these communities, and I stumble across this community online called the 501st Legion, which is basically a bunch of guys like me that want to wear white plastic costumes and run around and act like they're in Star Wars. Really cool guy named Albin Johnson that I met online had founded this group. And it really consisted of just a few, you know, dozen people. But I found the resources online there are other guys out there and girls who are making this stuff, and craftsmen, you know, quality, really cool costumers and prop builders. So I hooked up with them and got the real stuff. So this is me and a buddy in our brand new, awesome, accurate Stormtrooper costumes. Everybody gets a TK designation if you're a Stormtrooper. So you pick your number. I was TK326, but I was the 61st member of this group back in '97. Today, we have over 11,000 members worldwide in 47 countries. And I'm still 61. And when you get that many nerds together in a room, it can be pretty awesome. This was at a convention a few years ago. This was at the most recent convention we went to in Orlando, and I'll get to these conventions in a minute. But in addition to just getting together and saying, cool costume, that's awesome, we knew that kids love this stuff as much as we do, and we were kids when we got into it. So what could we do to pay something back? So we decided, sick kids really need attention, something to do. Hospitals are boring. So we decided to visit, raise some money, adopted some charities, Make-A-Wish, things like that, pediatric cancer. And we visit, burn units, children's hospitals, fundraiser events. And the organization got large enough that we spun off, not really spun off, but just created a charity wing of the division that of the 501st that keeps up with this stuff. And they released some statistics early this year. And I don't know if you can see that bottom number, but last year we were indirectly responsible for raising $32 million for charity. And, we call ourselves bad guys doing good because we're the Imperials, the bad guys in Star Wars. So it's not bad for a bunch of nerds wearing white plastic, running around. So I always want to stand out from the crowd. So all my buddies had Stormtrooper outfits. So I upgraded to a biker scout. That's me in the middle. And that's actually my buddy John wearing my old Stormtrooper suit. So it's like hand-me-downs, you keep it in the family. But that first costume, that first crappy one that I got from that comic book store, couldn't bear to part with it because it was my first foray into that kind of costuming. So it was destined for something a little more epic. I spent 3 months gluing 7,000 glass mirror tiles to it, and we came up with the term Disco Trooper. So this is like a character that I go out, and I forget my tagline. It's promoting the love for Star Wars and disco or something. I don't know, but so anyway, never throw anything out. So what does this have to do with the robots in that first dream? Well, a couple years later, Lucasfilm realizes all this is going on, and so they start throwing their own conventions, and they call them celebrations. The very first celebration was in Denver in '99, so we're like, yes, we're doing this, we're going. So my buddies and I, we pack up, we take our armor, we go, and we are, having a rocking good time, and I run across this one little R2-D2, the only one at the convention, and meet these twin brothers, the Jongsma brothers, that had built this guy from scratch, literally nothing. And then the light bulb went off. Hey, just like with the Stormtrooper armor, there are people out there that have that same dream as me, having their own robot, R2 specifically here, and they're doing it. I mean, I put my hands on it, my picture taken with him, and he exists. So I can, I think this is possible. So, track down, hey, yep, I was right. There's an online community of guys that build R2-D2s. So it incidentally was founded by a guy named Dave Everett from Australia, but it has its biggest presence here in the States. Online community, website, everything you want to know. These guys are meticulous. I mean, we figured out every part of R2-D2, every piece has a name, there's a standard set of club blueprints that are kept by a couple of master draftsmen that are members of the club. So if you build an R2 and you have a part that a friend of yours needs, you can guarantee that that part will fit his droid because you guys built from the same set of plans. So this was incredible because then guys in the club, guys and girls, started specializing in the parts that they built. So there are dome guys, there are skin guys, there are feet guys. So if you need help putting parts together, you just go to the guy. Didn't have the time, job, and stuff like that to get into it. But a few years later, figured I gotta get into this. I gotta get my droid going. So there was another Star Wars celebration. These coincidentally were happened in the year that the movies were released, the 3 prequel movies. and those of us that are hardcore call those the children's films, because there are 3 Star Wars movies. But anyway, you couldn't blame them. Lucasfilm's promoting these films, so they would have a celebration each year that the film came out. So I started working on my R2 in 2002. There's Workbench, putting them together. This is what we call part porn. You just see all the stuff, you want to put all this together and make a robot out of it. So I worked on him for a good 3.5 years, nights and weekends in the basement, and I used to make fun of guys that tinkered with cars, and now I know exactly how they feel. You come home, you want to just do something. You don't care what it is. You just, I want to play with it, and then maybe at the end of 4 hours you've accomplished something, maybe not, but you just feel great just playing with, whatever. So I did that for 3.5 years, and then 2005 rolls around. There's another celebration coming up. Hey presto, I've got a R2 that I finished. The next celebration was Celebration 3. This was for Episode 3. Thankfully, the end of that trilogy. And I wanted to do something special. I was going to debut my droid at that. Nobody had physically seen him. We posted pictures, and everybody had seen, just like you do everything else on the internet, but no one had seen him in the flesh or in the metal, as it goes. So I wanted something to differentiate him, so I thought, well, what does everybody know about R2 above all is help me Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, everybody knows Princess Leia was, had her stored the plans for the Death Star and gave her plea for help. So I thought maybe I could figure out a way to make my R2 give that message, project that message, and that would be a cool thing. So like everything else I do, it was way overproduced, and we got a girlfriend at the time, wife now. Green screen shoot. You're all gonna go, oh, but her name is Leia. I could not have planned that, but the universe shines on me sometimes. But we did a green screen shoot, and we choreographed this whole thing out. I had it all charted out. She lip synced it. I was like, you bend over here, you turn here, you do this. She nailed it. We put some effects on it. She was Princess Leia. Took him around. Put a little projector in him. This thing, it's people. Yeah, that same reaction. People are like, oh, really? So I was ready. I'm gonna wow him. I had no idea. I thought and there are hundreds and hundreds of guys and girls in this club building these droids. I had no idea that nobody had done this. So I got to Celebration 3, and I'm the only one there with the Leia hologram. And towards the end of the conference, the bigwigs come through, and I'm standing there with my droid projecting Princess Leia, and the maker himself walks in with Rick McCallum. That's Rick McCallum, the producer of the children's movies. Bent over. George is staring at the projection. The guy right behind George is actually Don Beast, who's responsible for all of the droids in the Star Wars films. So we call him Uncle Don. He's the Godfather. But the reaction, I was like, are you serious? You're actually amazed by what I did when, this is all tribute to you. And one of George's jokes, he was walking around asking us how much we had spent on our droids, how much time that it took. And we told him, and he turned to Rick, and he's like, you need to hire these guys. He's like, we spend $100,000, and it takes, 2 years to build one of these, and these guys are knocking them out every month for, $5,000, which was pretty cool. So, little change of mood here. Albin Johnson, the guy I mentioned who founded the 501st, the Stormtrooper group, one of his daughters, Katie, we lost Katie to pediatric cancer several years back. And she had been a big fan, like any kid is, of R2, and her favorite color was pink. And one of the things she'd asked for from her dad was like, can you build me an R2? And Albin wasn't an R2 builder. He's an armor builder. He does the costumes. But he joined up in the club and said, hey, Katie is sick, but Katie really wants an R2. So the guys in the club all got together. We donated all these parts, all this money, and we built a pink droid called R2KT, dedicated to Katie. And Katie obviously left us, but we travel KT around the country to events to raise awareness for pediatric cancer. We do the Vanderbilt We Care for Kids event every year, the Children's Hospital. So there's Katie and my R2 with a bunch of my goofy friends out at Vanderbilt promoting awareness and just having a generally good time with the kids. There's a tiny Princess Leia there. So, mission accomplished, dream realized, got the droid. So that's the first one. And did a little good in the process. So by realizing that, I thought, hey, maybe that second dream isn't so out of the question. And especially since I've met all of these wonderful people. This was a shot taken at the most recent celebration, and this is only about half of the droids and the builders that were at that convention. These people from all over the world who get together every few years to just show off and trade stories. So I thought, well, maybe there's a similar group like that out there that could help me realize this spaceship dream. There wasn't. So figured, this is around about that same time, 2005, that I had finished my R2. And I realized that, the spaceship is not going to be as easy as the Falcon was, as the R2 was. But I didn't really realize how much more it was going to be. First question was, how big is this thing? We don't even know. And part of the problem is you see the film's interior sets don't fit into exterior sets. When you see the Millennium Falcon on screen, it's not even the size that it should be to actually get those doors in there and those pieces inside. So we had to do some research. I did a ton of research online. An Australian by the name of Robert Brown had built an entire website called Ship of Riddles because there are so many, you turn a corner and the apparent size of things are totally different. So none of this made sense. Of course, it's all Hollywood set, so it didn't have to make sense. But what if it were a real ship? How big would it need to be? So I came up with some numbers with my research. Robert came up with pretty similar numbers, so I was feeling good about that. A college student out of Pennsylvania named Stenson was doing a 3D project. He was modeling the Falcon in 3D, and he came up with similar numbers. And then two professional illustrators, Travis and Chris Reef, were hired by Lucasfilm to do a set of blueprints for a book for DK Publishing. And they had to come up with a size because they had to put literal dimensions on these blueprints to show people. So at that point, we all kind of figured out that we know how big this thing is now, and this is blessed by Lucasfilm. So this is the real size. So what is that size? Well, it's huge. In order for everything to work, this thing has to be 114 feet long, 80-something feet wide, 30 feet tall, and just for reference, that's bigger than two of my houses. This thing is gigantic. So do I go with this dream? Is it really possible? Or do I give up now because reality is, pretty strong? Well, no. And I realized long ago that the best way to kick yourself in the pants and start realizing a goal is to tell everybody about it, and then you're committed. So I built a website and said, I'm going to build a Millennium Falcon. Now I got to find those like-minded people. Now I got to find those dreamers that can help me make this real. And another online community called the Replica Prop Forum is...
Chris.
Yes.
Chris, this is your father. You have 1 minute.
Are you serious? All right, I'm going to blow through these. So we find these guys on the Stinson was one of those guys. He's building this 3D thing. This is his signature from the forum. He's 3D modeling this thing. Those aren't photographs. Those are 3D models of how just insanely talented this guy is. So I'm going to blow through these, and you can see a lot of this work out front. So I tell him, well, you're doing the cockpit. You need to do the whole ship. He's like, okay, cool. So he models the whole ship. Here's some more interior. This is just crazy. This guy is just insanely talented. So then I meet another guy named Greg who's here today. Greg's taking Stinson's models and actually making these things real. And we've got this console outside. And then same thing with Greg. I was like, you got to build the whole thing. He's like, sure, no problem. So he starts cranking it out. So we've got this. And then, we've been building the website, posting things. One day the BBC calls. Says, we'd like to interview you. The freaking BBC. How do you know about this? our website went from 100 hits a day to 3/4 to a million hits a day. It was crazy. So we want to get this thing out for people to see it. I am going to go over, Ross. I'm sorry. We want people to see this in public. So I'm part of the group that organized the Nashville Mini Maker Faire, so we thought what a great forum to show this thing off. So we brought it, set it up. It was a huge hit. Everybody loved it. A bunch of R2's relatives showed up. We brought another robot, but that's a whole different story. We brought it to some conventions, sci-fi conventions, and if you know, the people the celebrities that come to these conventions are often just as big a geek as the people who attend. So if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, Eerie and Hodor actually came to sit in the Millennium Falcon. Hodor could barely fit. We got him in there. And then a personal dream of mine realized we did a show down in Huntsville with the Mythbusters tour, and Adam Savage showed up and officially Mythbuster approved the Falcon project. So that third term, I'm going to blow through this. Greeblies. Back when they were building the models for Star Wars, George Lucas wanted a used universe. He wanted it to feel like, these are all dirty and garbagey, and this thing is, for real, you could believe in. So all the modelers that were building models, they would go out and buy model kits and tear off little pieces and glue them onto their models. So a greebly was a term they came up with for anything you put on the outside of something that makes it look more complicated and technical than it actually is. So a greebly would take something like this and turn it into something like that. So if we're building this thing, we have to identify every one of these friggin' greeblies. Guess what? There's a bunch of guys online who are doing that. There's some insane guys who are documenting every single kit from the 60s and 70s and every single piece. Is it a shock absorber off a Japanese motorcycle? Is it a tank tread? Is it a submarine? And they've cataloged all of this stuff. That's good for the outside. The inside has just as many pieces. We have a guy on our forum named Wavy who's made it his personal mission to identify all these things, and he's come up with some crazy stuff. They used dashboards from old Volvos. They used hubcaps from Triumph cars, relays from airplanes, pieces off of aircraft from the British Royal Air Force. And then there were some pieces we just could not identify. We're like, what is this thing? We don't know. Nobody knows. So what do you do in the current day if you can't find the thing, but you know what it looks like? You 3D print it. So now we're 3D printing a lot of these pieces that don't exist anymore. Laser cutting. We didn't know what this thing was, but we knew what it looked like, so we could build it. So this Greeblies idea, we thought, well, what if we could build a software tool, like an online community that we've drawn so much from, where people who have dreams can get together, figure out how they can make that dream a reality. Do you need to learn a skill? Do you have a skill and you can teach? Do you need a tool, or do you have a tool that you can let somebody use? Or do you just want to watch? So we figured we would grab a domain, call this thing Greeblies, and with the help of a great group here called Make Nashville, who also helped with the Nashville Maker Faire and is populated by a lot of coders, we're going to build an online tool called Greeblies where you can take anything, any idea, and realize it. And our first, our test project is going to be a little spaceship that we're going to build. But, if you're a kid and you want to build a treehouse and you got 5 friends that don't necessarily live near you, get online, figure out how to make it work. So I'm way over time here. I really apologize. But that's how I was able to realize those dreams. And I want to make sure everybody goes for their dreams. Thanks.